late, or one of them,
Yeah, no
as you can
kidding.
see,
No kidding.
to speak of the black elite. You know who you're hearing from when we talk about Mr. Lawrence Otis Graham. So he's going to get into the origin of the black elite.
And also to see some of the distinctions, because a lot of people have looked at and they say, well, why are all the blacks light complexion? And historically, the black upper class has been light complexion because the group started from slavery, when the slave owners divided us on the plantations into the, excuse my French, the field niggers and the house niggers, and that was the term that was used, where they had the dark-skinned slaves working in the worst labor, and then the light-skinned slaves working in the quote-unquote prestige slave jobs as the mammies, the cooks, the butlers, the servants, and of course those were the ones who were also forced to procreate with the white slave owners, thus creating more light-skinned offspring, still slaves nevertheless, but they were also the ones who ultimately were allowed to be educated. So it was that caste system that really created the black upper class, and I guess the mistake of many members of this group was buying into this whole concept that there was a superiority based upon a lighter complexion.
Yeah, it's coming back to me now. I mean, how do you move beyond that has been in place for hundreds of years and gradually has been shoveled into everybody's heads? It's not an easy undoing.
I played this clip to show the intra-divide.
Oh yeah. Well,
we haven't got to passing yet. We just talk about light, fair-skinned black people against, the darker black people. So they already had separated themselves out into their own
into their own class.
Caste.
The
caste. Really,
yeah.
I think is a better term. And we've seen this in South Africa because you have your blacks, your colored. I'll say it again. You're colored.
Yeah, color people.
People of color.
Color people.
So I have this weird notion that people are immediately with people of color. It's like a dog whistle.
Right.
To say, people of color. So I'm not black. I put myself in with Asians and Indians and Hispanics. I'm one level above being black.
Right.
That's just my opinion, but I see this setting up but this goes back to the Kalergi plan, and we talked about that before.
But it also works the other way around. Kamala Harris will proudly say she's a woman of color, insinuating that she's black or African American, which she's not. So it's misused up and down.
Yeah, it's a safe space. It's a nice little landing spot.
Like a neutral spot. Yeah.
Right. But yeah, so I'm just pointing this out because I want to show the progression, how you get to passing. It was like you already had privileges. Yeah. We'll call it light privilege, not white privilege. So you already had light privilege. But that wasn't enough. That wasn't enough for you. You had to turn your back completely on your lineage. And this is, I'm going back to where the rub is when Nicole Hannah-Jones made her statement. This is a lot. This is a rub for people. Yeah. It's like it wasn't good enough. It wasn't good enough to have light privilege. You had to go all the way
and go for passing.
Right. Mm-hmm. So let's get into 1.2.
But that is why when you look at the earlier classes of graduates from Howard and Spelman and Fisk and Morehouse and schools like that, as well as the early members, as you can see on the cover of the book, 18-year-old young women who are graduating from the school, graduating and going to this cotillion in Manhattan, were light complexion women. So that is how this caste system got started. But and why we have such things as the brown paper bag and ruler test, which was also an important aspect of this community.
We've spoken about the brown paper bag test, which was actually at the historically black colleges. I don't know what was the ruler test. I don't remember if we talked about the ruler test.
I think it's the same thing. It's more of the, ruler is that like just to go back to I think the best system we compare this to is the South African system, which they had the pencil test, which is not about color, more it's hair texture. If they could put a pencil in your hair and it falls out, then you can be considered colored.
Wow.
And not black.
Wow.
So this is instant, and we had one of our producers write into us about the same thing in India.
Oh,
so
yeah,
this
I'm sure
is
it's
not
like that in India.
This is the white supremacy. This is the globalist.
Yes.
It's like this is what you need to aspire to.
Yes, the true white supremacy is pushing for this, and the true white supremacy comes from the lineage of the old families who have run the show for hundreds of years.
The blood. That's right. The blood. So that's your German families, your British families, some Russian families, families and bloodlines all throughout history. Correct. So he brought up two things. One you caught on to, the brown paper bag, and as you accurately stated, we talked about it, but I have the clip where we talked about it and he also mentioned a school in there that we talked about, Fisk. This is Matthew Knowles, Beyonce's dad, and this is from Show 9, speaking on colorism.
Fortunately, we had scrimmaged a little small black school. Larger schools scrimmage small black schools or play them in an initial season. And this coach at Fisk University whispered in my ear, because I played very well in the scrimmage, that if I ever wanted to go to Fisk University, to just call him. And I remember.
But Fisk had the brown paper bag test?
Brown paper bag test.
This is a real thing?
Oh, absolutely. It's a very known thing in the black community, the brown paper bag test.
I remember Azalea Banks was lightening her skin at one point, and she was talking about the brown paper bag test and how black guys respect the brown paper bag.
Well-known fact in
I had never heard of it until she said it. I didn't realize bag.
No, how it worked. This is I transferred in 1972.
Okay.
And it was the last class that they did the brown paper bag. And they would ask you for a photo, and you had to submit with your registration. And they would put the photo up against the brown paper bag.
Okay, and Fisk was a primarily black school?
Well, all black, 100% black.
So you have a 100% black school that would not admit dark-skinned people if they were not athletes?
That's absolutely right. Or if they were women and they had very prominent families, very wealthy families that donated a significant amount of money to the school.
Yeah, this has got to be one of my favorite stories from the show. Historically black, all black college in my lifetime. Sorry, son, too black. Can you believe that?
That's 8 years before I was born.
Mo,
we're not talking about 1872.
Mo, that was only 10 years before I went to college.
You could have gotten a Fisk.
I don't know. Yeah. If I just tan a little bit, I would have been good to go. It's crazy.
That goes to show you that that wasn't good enough for you. They had their own existence. I mean, their own structure, culture, universities, and that still wasn't enough. I'm just tearing out the story.
Have they ever admitted to this? Have they ever publicly said, "Wow, we did that, and we shouldn't do that, and we'll never do that again, and we abolished it then and then"? Have they ever really come clean on that, Fisk University?
I haven't seen a formal apology, and they probably won't. And something else I want to point out, that he says, like, if you were good at athletics, had enough money, you could get access. That's
Right.
even to this day with passing.
Yeah.
We see with OJ, they remember the statement, "I'm not black, I'm OJ." Tiger Woods, you know, these kind of things that when you're so successful, that white society would kind of graft you in. As it's a term they use, pre-qualifier of successful black man. That means something different.
Right.
It's kind of like when they say, "Oh, you're different." You know, like people tell you that, "Oh, you're different." So it's, oh yeah, you're allowed in society. But I digress on that point. But I'm just going to show you. I'm laying out the case of why I was so adamant, and other people were so adamant about people passing and then coming back. It's like you could have had light privilege and stayed black or kept your lineage. We're going to loosely use that word black.
Well, and I remember when we were talking about this, it was in the context of reparations, as we heard in that
True.
Karen Hunter show clip. Now, do you think that it's trendy?
I think if large sums of money start to be handed out,
Yeah, yes, I agree. If money is being handed out, and as I understand, the CEO of BET has calculated 14 trillion would be the number. I'm sure you saw that story.
yeah, I saw that, and what's her name? Laura Ingraham. She's not having that at all. So I'm like, now you see, this is why it's tangible. It's not. We're not going from one party to the other. We're not. It's what do you have to offer me for my vote?
Well, okay.
Transaction.
So, all right. So before I let you go on, so what?
Okay.
What has now happened in this election year is the Democrats are now taking advantage of this, as if they weren't behind it in the first place, but taking advantage of this and saying, clearly, you can only be with us. Can't you see? We are the ones with you. Obviously, all those others, those guys you should not be voting for them. And I think that message is hitting home, Mo.
I think they don't have a leg to stand on.
I agree, but I think that the mind control is so strong that it's hitting home.
I think it's hitting home with people that were going to vote anyway. These younger people, I really think they're disenchanted with the whole these protests that's turning into riots, or are bigger about. They started out as black people being outraged about a black man being killed in the most heinous way probably possible, with imagery that strikes that I alluded to before. But once we came out, it's like, yeah, once we open that door, as my analogy I always use,
Yeah.
other people came flying through that door.
Yep.
And left us holding the door.
And grab the eye. It's just
Right.
like mainly white kids. That's what I
It's
saw.
true, and the ones that are antagonizing the cops,
White.
the ones that are getting all in their face.
Yep.
I mean, it's kind of hard to tell, but I mean, yeah,
No, I can tell.
non-black. Just say non-black. Just say not, because I mean, they could be
Right. Non-black,
different, yeah.
non-male. How about that?
right.
Yeah. It's white girls standing in front of the cops with their phone, taunting them so that they can get some kind of cred or whatever it is when they get pushed away or tear gassed. Or it's a very odd phenomenon. I love seeing people who are walking up to them and say, hey, come here, and just grabbing these kids and pulling them back. You insane? Get out of here.
So this is what we're saying.
I just want to stop it for 1 sec. And I want to say that this is where I get my eggs from, right here, and my pies. I want to say that these people that are out there, like he said, these white girls in the faces of these cops, antagonizing the cops, It's almost like MK Ultra. I was talking about this yesterday, how I was listening to one of the Graces, like totally Grace, very graceful. I can't remember the Grace, but she had mentioned how these people all appear to be triggered, or Mike MK Ultra. So something to think about.
One of the people that we talked about on the show, so we're going to get into who passes. We played the clip maybe a couple times, but it's relevant to this conversation. And this is
the most disliked white man in the black community, allegedly, was black himself. That rumor doesn't surprise those who observe some of those blacks who pass over and become white bigots to cover their tracks, or perhaps they just suffer from self-hatred. But it sent Millie McGee back to her family tree in Macomb, Mississippi, to see if the man who became synonymous with the FBI and the hatred of Martin Luther King Jr. was himself her cousin, who had gone through the special Underground Railroad built from the South to Washington as white people. Thank you very much for being with me.
Thank you for having me.
Your book, Secrets Uncovered, J. Edgar Hoover, Passing for White. And I said passing for white because there's a question mark. Why the title Passing for White question mark?
Yeah, I remember this. And I remember looking at J. Edgar Hoover's picture going like, wow, I never really considered that.
And this is a phenomenon with people that pass, not all people that pass. And there's different stories and origin stories of people and how they end up passing. So I don't want to paint everybody with a broad brush.
Right.
But there is a segment
The J.
of
Edgar Hoover
pastors
brush.
that are self-loathing and become bigots themselves to prove that they are part of the club.
Yeah.
And I want to tie it back into what's going on now. You hear this, it's anecdotal evidence, but you hear it a lot about some black police that they're the worst to get pulled over because they're trying to prove
that they're not giving
they're part of the club.
They're not giving any breaks.
Even further than that, that it's like overcompensation.
Right.
And they think that that's what they need to do to prove that they're part of the club. So I think this is kind of the mindset of J. Edgar Hoover.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't want to be found out, so it's self-preservation. It's to prove that not to get found out, I have to maintain a hard line, right? We see this oftentimes with closeted homosexuals, right? They're very hateful.
Oh yeah.
Towards other homosexuals. So it's the same phenomenon. It's this closeted thing that causes them to be hyper aggressive.
And J. Edgar Hoover had a twofer in that, because not only was he passing, but he was also it was rumored that he was a homosexual, but also that he was just a cross-dresser, which at the time, of course, would not have been acceptable. Certainly not from the first guy to run the FBI.
So, and now it goes a lot to his psyche, right? I mean, you're carrying that kind of baggage around.
He got insane, yeah.
These type of people, and I'm going to use this term, and maybe it's not the most accepted term. These kind of people are seen as race traitors. Because not only did you pass and just live your life, as the, whatever you could pass as, you are trying to cause harm to the people you left behind. And that's the most disgusting. And if J. Edgar Hoover was alive and he tried to go and claim his reparation check that he might be entitled to,
that would not work out too well.
Right. And these are the worst case scenarios where people start to paint, to use as, examples of why you have the 10-year rule. Which the 10-year rule is not, I want to be clear, the 10-year rule is not my rule, but I'm explaining how
it's how people think about it, and I understand. It's
Right.
what it says more is it's not about 10 years or 5 years or 1 year. It's like, hey, you turned your back. That's it. Bye bye.
It's not that you're back on your color. It's not your color.
I didn't say that. I said you turned your back.
I didn't say that. No, I didn't say you said that. I'm elaborating on what you said. It's not color that you turned your back on. You turned your back. Grandparent. That is the most disgusting thing in my mind. I am so proud to be my father and mother's child. I could never imagine, even if, say for instance, they did something heinous, right? I was still not, and I just want to keep in and out of the current event that's going on now, but I just want mindset of how people easily depart. I don't care. Like I said,
It's interesting that there's another version of this from another persecuted group historically, which is Jews, who many have changed their name to sound less Jewish or in fact not Jewish at all. And I wonder how that's viewed by old school Jews. I have no idea if they feel like it's turning your back on them or not, or denying your.
It brought a thought to my brain of a movie with Michael Keaton. I can't remember the name of it, but he was terminally ill in the movie. He had moved out to Hollywood. I think he was Polish, and he had a Polish last name, and he changed it. And in the movie, his father was like, "How could you change your last name?" Like, I mean, that's big. I don't think people understand how important, and maybe in this world, maybe it's not now, but maybe I come from an antiquated time. But my last name lends itself to my grandfather and his father and his, that's what links me to them.
I didn't realize that Fax had such a long lineage as a name.
Yes.
My Life, I think, was the movie you're talking about. The Michael.
My Life, yes. And then in that, I'm just going to land that out, that this is not that would be the most hurtful thing that my children could do.
Yeah.
But I mean, like I said,
Coming from a guy who changed his name, I did feel a little bad for my pops. But the truth of the matter is, his name never got me anywhere. And he understood. You are appreciated. Thank you for watching. This is where I get my vegetables from. My parsley, all that right here.